In today's video, I'm going to talk about photographing on your own, a potent subject amongst photography, and particularly for myself. I think nowadays, people are always looking to do things as a group, as a collaborative basis. They want to do tasks with other people, and photography is one of them. But if you're someone like me who's on the more introverted side, I find a lot of strength, or gain a lot of strength I should say, from doing things on my own, and photography is definitely one of them. And I think so many other photographers are the same, more than you think. I would actually add to that. So today I want to explain why. So today I'm going to break down 5 habits and 5 benefits as to why you should go out and photograph on your own. Let's get into it then. The first benefit is that you can go at your own pace. Now, for all photographers, including myself, I have my own method of how I like to operate. So, for example, I have my favourite kind of lighting techniques, favourite compositions, favourite kind of frames I like to create as part of my photography, and you will as well as a photographer. You'll have your own kind of style and how you want to operate that helps you gain the photos you want to create. Now, individually, there's not anything wrong with having your own technique. The problem potentially arises is if you're out there shooting with other people. Other people might not actually suit the kind of methods you want to create. And I'll expand on that just now. So let's say you're out on a photo walk with one person or a group of people or so on. It doesn't really matter how many people, but you find an area where the light is very good and you really like what you're creating. You like the photos you can create from it. The people you're with might not actually favour those lightings as well. They may not share your kind of love for that kind of setting. They may not like that kind of settings that you're kind of taking photos in. And that can be a bit of a barrier between the two of you. Because if you're there taking photos, I mean, particularly if it was like myself, maybe I'm speaking more behalf on. If you were there taking photos and you're really enjoying it, but you see the person you're with is standing around, kind of not taking any photos at all, not really engaging with the environment, you might get a bit self-conscious. You might think, well, I'm enjoying it, but I don't want to affect them. I don't want them to kind of feel like they've got to wait, and I don't want to feel like a burden. And you might think, right, let's just move on to another spot. And by doing this, you're missing the chance of taking more photos that you want to make. So as I maintain at the start of this point, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having your own individual preference of how you want to take photos. But when you're out there and taking photos with other people, just keep in mind that sometimes opposites don't always attract. The style of photos that you want to create is never necessarily the photos that everybody else wants to create. So that can be a bit of a hindrance, because this is an issue that if you were shooting on your own, you wouldn't have this problem. You can do whatever you want at your own pace. You might find that patch of light that is actually suiting you, and you might want to stay in that area and take photos that you didn't plan. So it's just something to bear in mind, that you can go at your own pace and however you want to do it. The next one is that there's far less distractions. Now, if you're out there shooting on your own, you can kind of tunnel vision into your photography. You can go out there and focus on what it is you want to achieve. You can go out there, get the photos you want, and enjoy the process and immerse yourself in it. However, if you're out there shooting with one person or a group of people, you might find yourself, or you're more likely to find yourself, I should say, kind of like conversing or talking to these people, having a conversation with them. Now, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that, but if you're talking to other people out there when you're supposed to be taking photos, you're kind of more distracted and you're not really getting into the groove of it. You're not really getting into the flow of photography. Again, I maintain that there's absolutely nothing wrong with having the social aspect of shooting with other people and talking to them and having a good conversation. Like, if you're having a good conversation with someone, who am I to tell you shouldn't? But it's the fact is, if you're doing that, you're not focusing on what the purpose of your walk is, and that's photography, and being out there taking photos and taking the missing opportunities that you wouldn't miss if you were shooting on your own. I would definitely say that is a big weakness of mine. Like, if I'm out photographing on my own, I really do at times can get really so into the zone of it that I don't kind of like take into account my environment. So I would be terrible to kind of go on a photo walk with, because I would just be too fixated on need to take photos. So again, it's just another thing that it's an issue that arises if you're shooting with other people as opposed to going out and taking photos on your own. The next one is originality, a big one here, because I feel like, in my opinion, and this is where it's maybe more subjective to my opinion, so you can take this one with a pinch of salt, is that particularly if you're out there shooting with a group of people, like a big bunch of people, you might be out there walking around with them in a location and somebody spots something eye-catching and takes that photo. Now, this could start a kind of like a copycat effect where everyone else starts taking the same photo of what is the exact same photo that person took, using particularly maybe the same composition, the same exposure, the same lens, everything exactly almost identical. And for me, it's just like everybody's just taking the same photo, which is not the purpose of not just like going out there and group photography, but photography in general. Now, of course, I do absolutely acknowledge that somebody might want to take the same photo as that person out of admiration, and also because they might also like that photo. You might share the same kind of likes of photography, so I don't doubt there isn't anything wrong with that. But for me, it's not really how it should be done. You shouldn't be going out there and taking the same photos as each other. Now, I only have very limited experience of group photography, I will be completely honest and upfront about that. So again, it's a pinch of salt at this point, but I have seen it for myself that everyone does take the same photo, and it's not really, nobody's really breaking the mold and really kind of going out there as like, oh, I know that looks good, but I want to do this, or I want to do that. It's not really capturing your voice. You're not really taking your photos. You're just doing what everyone else is, and I don't really think it's not a very fulfilling process by doing that. Another aspect of this could be, let's say you're out there and you're taking photos, or you take a photo of a certain scene and you use your particular settings in terms of like how you want to expose for the photo, the framing compositions you want to use. Let's say you have that all planned out, you take your photo and you're happy with it, because in the end it's the photo you wanted to make. And then immediately after that, the person you're shooting with or somebody else goes and takes a photo, but with completely different kind of perspectives, uses maybe a different kind of lens, from maybe a wide to a telephoto lens. Maybe they overexposed, were you underexposed, and anything else, any other kind of like photographic technique just completely the opposite to you. Now that could potentially lead you to kind of doubt yourself and think, but wait a minute, if they're taking that photo doing the complete opposite to me, am I wrong? Am I doing it the wrong way around? Are they right? Or is it I should be doing it that way? Like, this can plant that seed of doubt that wasn't ever there before, and you start to think, well, am I actually taking the right photo? Should I be using this type of lens or that type of focal length? These are things that can plant seeds of doubt. So again, I'm not saying that's maybe that's a bit of a kind of like worst case scenario, and maybe I acknowledge that doesn't happen every single time, but certainly it is just one of those things that could creep up on you if you are shooting with someone else. The next one is that it builds confidence. Now, it can obviously be very daunting, and understandably so. If you're someone who's particularly maybe even new to photography, you can't think, right, I'm going to be going out there with a big camera, I'll be pointing it and taking photos of things. You think, oh, that's drawing attention to me and me alone. I don't really feel very comfortable doing that. You also just might not be very comfortable with the whole idea of photography in general. Like, it's not just about, you know, people who are necessarily shy or kind of more introverted. It's more about the act of people who are just not very confident in doing it themselves, and they feel like they need to have that person with them, tongue twister. Someone who they can shoot alongside with, who can help them. They feel like they need that guidance. But if you're only going to shoot with other people because you're not very confident in doing it yourself, you're really limiting your options and availability and chances to go out there and take photographs. Because, you know, you might not always find people in your area, like local photographers who are willing to shoot. You might have friends who are photographers, but they might not be available, or let's also be honest, they might not be very interested in it. So you're really narrowing your scope of opportunities to go out there and take photos. Now, I understand the kind of confidence, at least, to go out there and take photos on your own comes to us differently. I would say certainly maybe, you know, extroverts might do it because, you know, they're just kind of like not really shy. They're kind of very more outgoing. Introverts, you would think would be very shy as well, but I think as myself, as an introvert, I'm comfortable doing things on my own. You know, I kind of like prefer to actually take photos on my own and do things myself. So it wasn't ever really that much of a problem for me, and may not have been a problem for other people. But there are photographers out there who maybe just like, will understand, admittedly, will just feel like they can't do it on their own, but they need someone with them, which is absolutely fine. Now, I'm not denying that it's hard and that it's difficult to go out there and shoot on your own. In no way do I deny that. However, I do believe all it takes is you just to do it one time. Just go out there with your camera. Try to be as inconspicuous as possible. Try to maybe even just take a small camera body if you have it, and maybe just the smallest lens, maybe a 50mm or a 35mm, something that doesn't really draw attention to yourself. See, if you're suddenly able to go out there yourself and just take photos, suddenly that will boost your confidence immensely, because this initial fear and skepticism, of going out there and shooting yourself, suddenly you've overcame that. You've gone out there and realised that it isn't actually as daunting as you think, right? What happens is you get the odd side eye, people looking at you, but honestly, with how popular photography is nowadays, I don't think people really stop and look at you anymore. You might find people just walk right past you. So honestly, it is not as scary as you think. If anybody watching this has that fear of shooting outside on their own in street photography perspective, it's not as daunting as you think. It just takes that one time for you to go out there and overcome that hurdle, and you'll never, I really do believe, you won't have that same fear again. And finally, we come on to the last point, which is that you stand out less. Now, if you're out there on your own, like I said earlier, you're not really going to draw a great deal of attention to yourself. People just look at you just a kind of lone person out there with your camera, and that's really it after that. But if you're out there with a group of people, or a large group of people at that, and everyone's out there got their cameras out and everyone's taking photos at certain locations with their big bulky lenses, that is going to draw a lot of attention, and sometimes a lot of unwanted attention at that. This attention could be just generally the public passing by and kind of glancing out the side of their eye at you, or people who are driving past you in their cars, they're seeing all these people out with their various size of lenses and wondering what are they taking photos of. But also in today's kind of like hyper secure world, could actually attract a lot of attention from security. So if you're shooting in an area with a lot of like private areas or in front of like a public space where there's a lot of like stores of security, it could attract a lot of attention from them as well. And another aspect of this in kind of the street photography perspective, if you're out there shooting a group of people and people spot you and your fellow photographers, all their big lenses, it can draw them to get a bit self-conscious, and they might want to avoid the area. They might not want to get into an area where there's a lot of like people with their cameras who are shooting photos. They may not want to be in the photo themselves because they might just value their privacy, which is completely understandable. But by doing so, that's meaning you're losing out on those photo opportunities. If you're out there on your own, you'd be a lot more kind of conspicuous. People wouldn't really notice you as much, so you'd have more opportunities to take those photos you want to take. But if you're in a big group of people, naturally people are going to spot you and think, oh, I don't really like the look of that, I want to avoid that area. And you know, it's not really creating the photos you want to make. While absolutely is understandable, people want to value their privacy, you're also losing out on your photo opportunities. And that is it. Those are 5 reasons and 5 benefits of why you should go out there and take photographs on your own. I do admit, right, so I'm not absolutely making this video to completely diminish the idea of taking photos as part of a group. Of course there will be benefits to it, but for me personally, again, only personally for me alone, I prefer to do it myself. I found if I wasn't able to do it on my own, I wouldn't have been able to create the portfolio and find the kind of photos that I want to take. I've took a lot from being able to photograph on my own. So hopefully if you're someone who's like me and like many other photographers, hopefully this has helped you. But more than that, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.